Hello everyone, Ganga here. Now we are going to listen to podcast news which includes important national, international and business, economy, news. While walking in the morning or evening, while cooking, cycling or during free time you can listen. It will enhance your learning and understanding of various accents and pronunciations. Listening improves the quality of communication and comprehension. Before going ahead, I would like to welcome you all to the virtual school. A new way of learning and teaching, with the vision of let's grow together. Our mission is to learn how to learn and teach how to teach. So stay tuned. And here we go. Important national news. 29th June 2021. NIA, NSG find no debris of drones at Jammu IAF base. 2 drones fired upon at Jammu military installation, Army. On high alert, Army personnel on vigil after drones were spotted at the Kaluchak military station on Monday. Pti. Pirzada Ashik Srinagar. With no wreckage of unmanned vehicles found at the technical airport of the Indian Air Force, IAF, Jammu Air Force Station, a National Security Guard, NSG, team joined the National Investigation Agency, NIA, on Monday to investigate the possibility of the use of a long-distance launching pad to send in drones with payloads of explosives. Amid the development, the Army said 2 drones were spotted and fired upon at a military installation in Jammu on the midnight of June 27 to 28. Official sources said the teams of the NSG and the NIA failed to find any debris of drones from the 2 blast spots at the IAF base. They were working on both the angles, the use of a local launch pad and a long-distance one to fly in the drones. So far, no spot had been identified as a launch pad near the base, which is just 16 kilometers from the international border. It seems the drones may have managed to drop the payload and escape from the spot. Drones, which require an open field or a building top for achieving flight, are frequency controlled and easily evade traditional radar systems. Gov unveils 6 rupees and 28 paise lakh crore stimulus post-second COVID wave easier credit for healthcare investments. Special correspondent, New Delhi. Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman on Monday announced some fresh relief measures for the economy. The first such package after the second COVID-19 wave, focusing largely on extending loan guarantees and concessional credit for pandemic-hit sectors and investments to ramp up healthcare capacities. The government pegged the total financial implications of the package, which included the reiteration of some steps that were already announced, such as the provision of food grains to the poor till November and higher fertilizer subsidies, at 6,28,993 rupees crore. Economists, however, noted that the elements of direct stimulus in the package and its upfront fiscal costs in 2021 to 22 are likely to be limited. More steps may be needed to shore up the economy through the rest of the year, they said. Calling the measures an effort to stimulate growth, exports and employment as well as provide relief to COVID-affected sectors, Ms. Sitharaman announced an expansion of the existing emergency credit line guarantee scheme by Rupee 1.5 lakh crore. She also announced a new 7,500 rupees crore scheme for loans up to 1 rupee and 25 paise lakh to small borrowers through microfinance institutions. 10-month dosage gap boosts antibodies, says Oxford study report on delayed second shot of AstraZeneca vaccine. Jacob Koshi, New Delhi. 2 doses of the AstraZeneca vaccine, administered 44 to 45 weeks apart, generated nearly 4 times the level of antibodies than when the doses were given 8 to 12 weeks apart, says a report by the Oxford Vaccine Group, the developers of the vaccine. on Monday. Antibody levels remained elevated for nearly a year, and a third booster dose of the vaccine, given to a subset of volunteers, also significantly boosted antibody levels to twice that after a second dose. A single dose of ChAdOx1COVID-19, with a second dose given after a prolonged period, may, therefore, be an effective strategy when vaccine supplies are scarce in the short term. A third dose results in a further increase in immune responses, including greater neutralization of variant SARS-CoV-2 viruses, and could be used to increase vaccine efficacy against variants in vulnerable populations, the authors report in a preprint publication. This means that the study is yet to be peer-reviewed. A group of vaccine volunteers, who got their second dose 15 to 25 weeks after the first, saw average antibody levels at nearly twice those in the 8 to 12 week interval, suggesting that lengthening the duration between doses appeared to be boosting antibody count. Thus, average IgG, immunoglobulin G, levels for 8 to 12, 15 to 25, and 44 to 46 weeks were 923, 1,860 and 3,738 units respectively, when measured 28 days after the second dose. Dialogue not at cost of national security, says Rajnath. Defense Minister recalls sacrifice of soldiers in Galwan clash. Rajnath Singh, Special Correspondent, New Delhi, stating that the country will never forget the supreme sacrifice of those who laid down their lives in the Galwan clash last year. Defense Minister Rajnath Singh on Monday reiterated India's commitment to resolving disputes with neighboring countries through dialogue. However, he assured that the security of the nation will not be compromised. Efforts should be made to find a solution through dialogue with neighboring countries. The intention should be clear. Our army has the capability to give a befitting reply to every challenge, Mr. Singh said. He interacted with officers and soldiers of the 14 Corps at Karoo military station. Mr. Singh is on a 3-day visit to Ladakh to review the security situation as India and China prepare for the 12th round of Corps commander talks to take forward the disengagement process in eastern Ladakh. This is also his first visit to the region since the first phase of disengagement in February, in which both sides pulled back thousands of troops, tanks and armored vehicles from Pangong. So, we are the priests of world peace. Even when we take up weapons, that is to establish peace. Till date, India has neither attacked any country nor have we captured an inch of land of any country, the minister said. Hemant defense move on population control disincentives should balance SOPs. Hemant Biswa Sarma, Rahul Karmakar, Guwahati. Assam Chief Minister Hemant Biswa Sarma, who has cracked down on the drug trade since taking charge on May 10, said disincentives should balance incentives in the government's approach to population control. He also defended the drive against encroachers on government, forest and monastery land, and said it was unfortunate that some saw the effort through a communal lens. He said it was accidental that some evicted people belonged to the religious minority group. Muslim population in Assam has been growing at 29% and Hindus are growing at just 10%. This means there will be a lot of poverty and illiteracy among Muslims. We need certain measures for slowing down population growth, but we will ensure Muslims themselves take the initiative, he told The Hindu. Colleges, schools in Bihar likely to open after July 6. Classes to restart in a phased manner. Special Correspondent Patna. Educational institutions in Bihar are likely to reopen in a phased manner after July 6. All government and private educational institutions across the state have remained closed since April 5. If the COVID-19 situation keeps improving like this and remains stable, all government and private educational institutions across the state will be reopened in a phased manner after July 6, State Education Minister Vijay Kumar Chaudhary said. On July 6, Unlock 3 will end across the state. In the first phase, all universities and colleges would be allowed to open with 50% students adhering to COVID protocol. In the second phase, senior secondary and secondary classes would resume and classes 1 to 5 would start functioning in third phase, the minister said. Coaching institutes too would be opened. Leopard killed in road accident. Feline hit by speeding vehicle near Asola Bhatti Sanctuary. The female leopard was found dead on Surajkund Road. Special Arrangement 9182. Special Correspondent Faridabad. A 2-year-old female leopard was fatally knocked down by a speeding vehicle on Surajkund Road here on Monday. Chief Conservator of Forests, Wildlife, Mahendra Singh Malik said the accident took place near Asola Bhatti Wildlife Sanctuary in the early hours. A board of doctors has been set up for autopsy. A video taken after the accident showed the leopard lying dead by the roadside with injuries to its face. Mr. Malik said the leopard strayed onto the road to hunt and was hit by a vehicle. Though there were walls on both sides of the road, the feline could easily scale them. 2 leopards, including the present one, have died in road accidents in Faridabad in less than a year, said Mr. Malik. Similarly, 2-3 leopard deaths have been reported in road accidents in Gurugram's Manesar as well. Besides leopards, other wild animals such as jackals, monkeys and nilgais have died or sustained injuries in accidents in Gurugram and Faridabad over the past few years while crossing the roads passing through the Aravalis. Optimism over tiger sighting in small Assam sanctuary. It covers 26 sq km bordering Bhutan. Special Correspondent Guwahati. One of Assam's smallest wildlife sanctuaries could be the newest home of the tiger in the state. Wildlife specialists have the first photographic evidence of a tiger inhabiting the 26.22 sq km Banedi Wildlife Sanctuary straddling northern Assam's Baksa and Udalguri districts and bordering Bhutan. The tiger was captured in camera traps during an exercise for more than a month up to May 10. We had set up the first camera trap in 2014 but could only see pug marks. The Forest Department too recorded pug marks in 2016. The images this time augur well for the small habitat well connected to a corridor between the Royal Manas National Park and the Jomot Shatnagatha Wildlife Sanctuary, WWF India's Sunit Das told The Hindu. Farmer leaders unite against politics of hate. We will visit UP, Uttarakhand and other states to expose the authoritarian and anti-farmer Modi government. KKU Chief Darshan Pal and AIKS Haryana Vice President Inderjit Singh at the farmers' meet in New. Special Arrangement. Special Correspondent GURUGRAM. Krantika Kisan Union President Darshan Pal on Monday said the farmer leaders would visit Uttar Pradesh and Uttarakhand apart from other states across the country to expose the Modi government, which happened to be the most anti-farmer and authoritarian, adding that the farmers' fight was for Zameen, land, and Zamir, conscience. Mr. Pal was speaking at Kisan Mazdoor Bachara Panchayat at Sanhera in New on Haryana-Rajasthan border. The public meeting was held in the background of 2 recent tragedies in the area: the kidnapping and murder of Asif, a local youth, and the death of another young man, Junag, allegedly due to the injuries inflicted in the custody of Faridabad police and alleged attempts to communalize the atmosphere. Swaraj India National President Yogendra Yadav exhorted the people to foil the designs of the BJP and the RSS to disrupt the unity of Mewat region that had very deep historical roots of common sacrifices and common heritage. After having been unsuccessful in its other machinations to suppress the ongoing farmers' agitation, they were desperate to disrupt the social fabric by inciting communal violence, which was their last resort, keeping also in view the impending assembly elections in some states including Uttar Pradesh, said Mr. Yadav. Bharatiya Kisan Union, Charuni, leader Ghulam Singh Charuni explained that the toiling people remained poor because they were divided on caste and religion. All India Kisan Sabha, AIKS, President Ashok Dhawale referred to the freedom struggle which had martyrs from different religious communities, Hindu, Muslim, Sikhs, and even Tiawan BILS, that formed a cultural mosaic which was facing its test and needed to be preserved. AIKS Haryana Vice President, Inderjit Singh stated that Mewat region was penalized out of vengeance for its rebellious character, first by Britishers and later by successive regimes after independence, in all development matters including irrigation, education, employment and excesses by the police. BJP organized riots. Young farmer leader Abhimanyu Kohar accused the BJP of organizing communal riots in Muzaffarnagar in 2013 and cashing it in 2014 Lok Sabha election. Jagjit Singh Dalewal, Satyavan, Ibrahim Khan, Zafar Yaduvanshi, Ranjit Raju, Satbir Singh and Maulana Salim were also present. A resolution was passed at the meeting by raising of hands that politics of hate and division will not be allowed to succeed and farmers' movement will be strengthened. CBI seeks to record Narayanan's statement. Central Agency's team is in Kerala to probe police frame-up that resulted in the ISRO spy case in 1994. Nambi Narayanan GOPAKUMARS. Special Correspondent Thiruvananthapuram. A Central Bureau of Investigation team was here to investigate the police frame-up that allegedly resulted in the infamous ISRO spy case in 1994. Last month, the CBI filed an FIR marked as classified in the Chief Judicial Magistrate Court here, accusing 4 former law enforcers of wrongful arrest, custodial torture, and unjustified incarceration of former ISRO scientist Nambi Narayanan and others. It had named retired Director General of Police C.B. Matthews, who headed the Special Investigation Team, SIT, that probed the ISRO scandal, his deputies K.K. Joshua, S. Vijayan, and Kampi, S. Durgadutta, and the then Deputy Director, Intelligence Bureau, R.B. Sri Kumar, as accused in the FIR. Recently, a district court here had granted anticipatory bail to Mr. Matthews in the case. According to sources close to Mr. Narayanan, the CBI had contacted the former scientist and sought time to take his statement on Tuesday. They said the agency had spoken to him on the phone. Mr. Narayanan reportedly told the investigators that he was ready to give his statement. However, the agency had not fixed the interview venue. It was not immediately known whether the CBI had contacted the accused in the case. They have also moved the court for anticipatory bail. The grim chapter in the annals of police investigation in Kerala has its provenance in a case registered at the Vanchiyur station on 13 November 1994. Based on a dubious special branch report, the police had booked 2 Maldivian women for overstay and violation of the provisions of the Official Secrets Act. The charging officers accused the women of attempting to entrap ISRO scientists involved in the cryogenic engine procurement project. In addition, they alleged the women had spirited out high-end space secrets out of India for a foreign power. Soon, newspapers were awash with ill-informed and salacious reports about honey traps, stolen rocket designs, ensnared scientists, complicit politicians, and conniving police officers. Mr. Narayanan, fellow scientist G. Sasikumaran, and two ISRO consultants K. Chandrasekhar and Sudhir Kumar Sharma were caught up in the vortex of the stormy scandal. Opposing factions in the then ruling Congress exploited the scandal to settle scores. The ISRO spy case led to the resignation of then Chief Minister K. Karunkaran. The CBI had registered the case at the behest of the Supreme Court. Nuclear-capable Agni-P missile test fired. It has many advanced technologies and will strengthen our credible deterrence capabilities, Rajnath. Advanced variant, Agni Prime, being test-fired from Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam Island off the coast of Odisha on Monday. PTI. Special Correspondent, New Delhi. A new generation nuclear-capable ballistic missile, Agni-P Prime, was successfully test-fired by the Defense Research and Development Organization, DRDO, on Monday. Agni-P is a new generation advanced variant of Agni class of missiles. It is a canisterized missile with range capability between 1000 and 2000 km, a DRDO statement said. The test was conducted at 10:55 am from the Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam Island, Balasore, off the coast of Odisha. High accuracy. Various telemetry and radar stations positioned along the eastern coast tracked and monitored the missile, the statement said. The missile followed textbook trajectory, meeting all mission objectives with high level of accuracy. Congratulating the DRDO, Defense Minister Rajnath Singh said on Twitter, many advanced technologies including composites, propulsion systems, innovative guidance and control mechanisms and state-of-the-art navigation systems have been introduced. The Agni-P missile would further strengthen India's credible deterrence capabilities. Explaining the differences from the earlier Agni class of missiles, a DRDO official said Agni-P had improved parameters, including maneuvering and accuracy. There is a complete technology upgrade in every way. Cuts launch time. Canisterization of missiles reduces the time required to launch the missile while improving its storage and mobility, one defense official explained. The Agni class of missiles are the mainstay of India's nuclear launch capability, which also includes the Prithvi short-range ballistic missiles, submarine-launched ballistic missiles and fighter aircraft. The longest of the Agni series, Agni-V, an intercontinental ballistic missile, ICBM, with a range of over 5,000 kilometers, has already been tested several times and validated for induction. In the past few years, India has also operationalized its submarine-based nuclear launch capability, completing the nuclear triad. This is especially important given India's no-first-use policy while reserving the right of massive retaliation if struck with nuclear weapons first. As reported by The Hindu earlier, the DRDO, in January 2020, successfully test-fired a 500 km range submarine-launched ballistic missile, K-4 from a submerged pontoon off the Vishakhapatnam coast. Once inducted, these missiles will be the mainstay of the Arihant class of indigenous ballistic missile nuclear submarines, SSBN, and will give India the standoff capability to launch nuclear weapons submerged in Indian waters. INS Arihant, the only SSBN in service, is armed with K-15 missiles with a range of 750 kilometers. AG Venugopal gets one more extension. Legal Correspondent, New Delhi. The Union government has extended the tenure of Attorney General K.K. Venugopal by a year. He will continue as the government's top law officer till 30th June 2022. This is the second time the centre has extended his tenure. Mr. Venugopal, 89, who was appointed Attorney General in July 2017, received his first extension in 2020. He took over as the 15th Attorney General after senior advocate Mukul Rohtagi demitted office citing personal reasons. Mr. Venugopal would be at the helm of the government's legal defense in several sensitive cases pending in the Supreme Court, which includes the challenge to the Citizenship Amendment Act, CAA, and the withdrawal of special status to Jammu and Kashmir. Allow CAA exam. ICAI urges court it is a professional exam and should not be equated with class 10 or 12 exams. Legal correspondent, New Delhi. The Institute of Chartered Accountants of India, ICAI, told the Supreme Court on Monday that it had a statutory duty to conduct the Chartered Accountants (CA) exam in July for the benefit of around 3.74 lakh candidates. Appearing before a bench led by Justice A.M. Khanwilkar, senior advocate Ramji Srinivasan, for the ICAI, said opt-out option was available for candidates or whose families had tested COVID-19 positive. The option can be exercised on production of COVID-19 positive RT-PCR report. Such examinee would be shifted to November 2021 examination cycle, a brief note submitted by the ICAI in the court said. The court adjourned the case for detailed hearing to June 29. The exam is scheduled for July 5. The bench was hearing pleas to cancel the exam, like the CBSE exams, because of the pandemic. The Chartered Accountants exams are professional examinations and ought not to be equated with the CBSE or other state board examinations for classes 10 or 12. It is in the interest of the candidates aspiring to become chartered accountants, start their professional lives and earn livelihoods, that the examinations be held, the ICAI said. July was the APT time to conduct the exams with all safety protocols in place, considering the lull in COVID-19 cases. The third wave may hit in September or October, it stated. COVID-19 cases low. The COVID-19 spread is now at a substantially low level, therefore, this is the opportune moment to offer the aspiring chartered accountants to further their professional careers. As on date, the number of COVID-19 cases are comparatively low and thus it would be in the best interests of the candidates if the examinations are held as per the schedule and not cancelled or postponed, it argued. The Supreme Court had in the past allowed exams to be held whenever the risk had been minimum. The court has been pleased to allow Class 12 exams for Kerala and Bihar, which were held in April 2021 and February 2021, the note reasoned. The candidates were eager to take the exam. Out of 3,74,230 candidates, as on June 27, more than 2,82,000 candidates have downloaded their admit cards, thus showing their eagerness to appear in the examinations, the ICAI said. The decision to have the exams was taken after meticulous planning. The average number of examinees in an examination room was 12. The ICAI questioned the bona fide of the petitions seeking the cancellation or postponement of the exams at this last minute. P. Sainath selected for 2021 Fukuoka Grand Prize. He promoted civil cooperation through his writings. P. Sainath. Special Correspondent, New Delhi. Noted journalist P. Sainath has been selected as one of the 3 recipients of the Fukuoka Prize for 2021. Mr. Sainath will receive the Grand Prize of the Fukuoka Prize, while the Academic Prize and the Prize for Arts and Culture will go to Kishimoto Mayo of Japan and filmmaker Prabda Yoon of Thailand, respectively. In a statement issued by the Secretariat of the Fukuoka Prize Committee, Mr. Sainath was described as a very deserving recipient of the Grand Prize of Fukuoka Prize. The Secretariat noted his work for creating a new form of knowledge through his writings and commentaries on rural India and for promoting civil cooperation. The Fukuoka Prize is given annually to distinguished people to foster and increase awareness of Asian cultures, and to create a broad framework of exchange and mutual learning among the Asian people. The Grand Prize has earlier been awarded to Muhammad Yunus from Bangladesh, historian Romila Thapa, and Sarod Maestro Amjad Ali Khan. 11 Indians have received the Fukuoka Prize so far. A total of 115 people from 28 countries and areas have received the prize in the past 30 years. The prize was established in 1990. Professor Mayo has been recognized for her understanding of Chinese history. Prabda Yoon will receive the prize for increasing understanding of Japan in Thailand and for pursuing a deeper philosophical insight into the future of humanity, said the statement from the Secretariat of the Fukuoka Prize Committee. This year's award ceremony will be held online on September 29. Interview Vertical Bar Himant Biswa Sarma. Disincentives and incentives go together in approach to population. We will have to expand health and educational initiatives for slowing down population growth in the state, says Assam Chief Minister Rahul Karmakar. Since taking oath as Assam's 15th Chief Minister on May 10, Himant Biswa Sarma has waged a war against drugs. But he has grabbed more attention for his advice to Muslims to adopt decent family planning measures and for sanctioning a drive to evict encroachers from temple and government lands in which the minorities have mostly been affected. He speaks on these and other issues. What made you advise the Bengal origin Muslims to adopt family planning measures and consider linking government schemes to a two-child policy in future? Today, we have been able to manage our annual population growth to somewhere around 1.6%, but further dissection of the past two censuses shows that the Muslim population in Assam is growing consistently at almost 29% while Hindus are growing at just 10%. This means there will be a lot of poverty and illiteracy among Muslims. Somehow we need to bring certain measures for slowing down population growth, and for that we need to expand health and educational initiatives. You must look at our policy parameters when you talk of government schemes. First, we said there should be incentives like free education for girls, financial inclusion for minority women, reservation in panchayat and government jobs for women in general, and the establishment of women's colleges and university in minority areas. But if you only focus on incentives without disincentives, any policy is bound to fail. To put it simply, if you are punishing someone for criminal activity, you must reward people for good deeds. In a society, you have to have an approach where both incentives and disincentives work together. But the approach to population should come from within the community, because any effort from outside will be interpreted on political lines. What is the logic behind excluding the tea plantation workers apart from scheduled castes and scheduled tribes from the population-based incentives and disincentives? The scheduled tribes population in Assam is decreasing. People belonging to the tea community are essentially Tiavan BILS, although they are constitutionally not recognized as STs. But they are Adivasis and are either SCs or STs in their original homeland. So our policy is consistent in the national context. It is very difficult to address the issue of the demand to grant them Saint status, along with 5 other communities. The communities enjoying Saint status are opposed to the move, and I don't want clashes because of this opposition. This has been a long pending issue and I don't think we can address it in a hurried manner. You have launched an eviction drive against encroachers on government, forest and temple land. Is this directed at migrant Muslims? It seems so from the outside. It is merely accidental that some of the evicted people belong to the religious minority group, but we have also evicted non-Muslims. We evicted people from Geetnagar, in Guwahati on June 26, who are all Hindus and indigenous Assamese. It is not that we are targeting a community, but unfortunately, encroachment is higher on that side. For me, encroachers are a class who turn out to be Muslims or Hindus when the action is taken on the ground. As Chief Minister, my duty is to protect the forests and I don't have to see which religion the evicted belong to. The Supreme Court and the High Court keep passing orders for ensuring that the forest cover does not reduce. I am just acting according to the national policy. As for land belonging to Satras, Vaishnav monasteries, and Nangas, community prayer halls, we are on the same page as the Congress and the All India United Democratic Front, UDF. There was unanimity across the board when I appealed in the Assembly for Hindus not to occupy mosque land and Muslims not to occupy the land of the Satras and Nangas. What is your stand on the National Register of Citizens, NRC, that seems to have been left in limbo? Our NRC coordinator has filed a petition in the Supreme Court for a relook at the document. It is up to the court to hear the petition. Your government has launched a massive drive against drugs, but the major problem is the inflow of narcotic substances from Myanmar through border states ruled by the BJP or allies. Are you going for a coordinated push? We have not discussed the issue at the Chief Minister's level because Union Home Minister Amit Shah is coming to Shillong in July and one of the issues is coordination among the northeastern states for checking the drug menace and trafficking of women and children. I think we will see more prompt and positive results. The ULFA Independent declared a 3-month ceasefire after your appeal. Is a peace process possible despite its chief Paresh Barua's insistence on discussing the sovereignty of Assam? That terminology is dicey. He has his ideology impacted by decades of living in the jungles, and I have taken an oath to protect the sovereignty of the country. This is an irreconcilable matter, but if we can coin another word to discuss the same issues, we can make some progress. Nevertheless, there are many people who are in touch with the ULFAI for discussing substantial issues without insisting on the word. India has reported 40,845 cases of mucormycosis so far. Minister active COVID-19 cases mostly in Maharashtra, Kerala, TN, Bengal and Odisha. Comforting the sick, award allotted for mucormycosis patients at a hospital in Ahmedabad, Gujarat. Vijay Sonji, Special Correspondent, New Delhi. India has so far reported 40,845 cases of mucormycosis during the second wave of the pandemic, Union Health Minister Harsh Vardhan said on Monday while chairing the 29th meeting of the Group of Ministers, GOEM, on COVID-19 by video conference. A total of 31,344 of the cases were rhinocerebral in nature, Mr. Vardhan said. Fatalities due to the infection stood at 3,129, while 34,940 patients had COVID-19, 85.5%, 26,187, about 64.11%, had diabetes as a comorbidity and 21,523, 52.69%, of those infected were on steroids. Also, 13,083, 32%, Patients were in the 18 to 45 age group, 17,464, 42% were between 45 and 60, and 10,082, 24% patients were above the age of 60. During the meeting, Balram Bhargava, Secretary, Health Research, and Director General, Indian Council of Medical Research, ICMR, said the second wave had still not subsided as 80 districts had a high positivity rate. He advised against any laxity at this stage. The vaccines were effective against the alpha, beta, gamma and delta variants, he added. The GOM reiterated the importance of COVID-appropriate behavior, the Health Ministry said, adding that Sujit K. Singh, Director, National Centre for Disease Control, NCDC, presented a detailed report on the trajectory of the virus. Active cases. Active cases continued to be mainly concentrated in Maharashtra, Kerala, Tamil Nadu, West Bengal and Odisha, which were also reporting a growth rate more than the national COVID-19 growth rate, Mr. Singh said. While 19 states are reporting fatality figures in the single digit, less than 10, Kerala, Karnataka, Maharashtra and Tamil Nadu are reporting more than 100 deaths daily. Hope to resolve Green Pass issue soon, says SII CEO. Covishield has not been approved by EU's drug regulator. Other Poonawalla Francis Mascarenhas. Staff reporter Pune. Amid concerns that Indian travellers who have taken Covishield may not be eligible for the Green Pass issued by the European Union, EU, for travel, Adar Poonawalla, CEO, Serum Institute of India, SII, on Monday said he had already taken up the matter, at the highest levels, and hoped for an early resolution of the issue. The SII CEO, in a tweet, said, I realized that a lot of Indians who have taken Covishield are facing issues with travel to the EU. I assure everyone, I have taken this up at the highest levels and hope to resolve this matter soon, both with regulators and at a diplomatic level with countries. The SII manufactures the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine, with a license from AstraZeneca, under the brand name Covishield in India. While the EU's drug regulator, the European Medicines Agency, EMA, has approved Vaxzevria, as AstraZeneca's shot is known outside India, Covishield has not figured in its approval list despite being approved by the World Health Organization. In an email response to media outlets, the EMA's press officer said it had received a submission for marketing authorization only for Vaxzevria. This was evaluated by the EMA, which led to its authorization in the EU. Stating that vaccines were biological products, the EMA's statement further said, even tiny differences in the manufacturing conditions can result in differences in the final product, and EU law, therefore, requires the manufacturing sites and production processes to be assessed and approved as part of the authorization process. Along with Vaxzevria, 3 other vaccines have been approved by the EMA, Comirnaty, manufactured by Pfizer-BioNTech, Moderna and Janssen, by Johnson & Johnson. Thank you. International news. US airstrikes hit Iran-backed militias in Syria, Iraq, Pentagon attack on facilities on Iraq-Syria border in response to drone assaults by militants. Iran-backed Shia militias marching in Diyala, Iraq. 2 Shia militia groups were targeted by the US on Sunday. AFO. Shriram Lakshman, Washington. The US has, on President Joe Biden's direction, conducted airstrikes at 2 locations in Syria and 1 in Iraq, the Pentagon announced. The early morning, defensive precision airstrikes, were carried out on facilities along the Iraq-Syria border used by Iran-backed militias to conduct drone attacks against American personnel and facilities in Iraq, according to the Pentagon. UK-based Syrian Observatory for Human Rights said 7 militia members were killed in the airstrikes. Several Iran-backed militia groups, including Kataib Hezbollah, KH, and Kataib Saeed al-Shuhar, KSS, used these facilities, a statement from Pentagon spokesperson John Kirby said. Mr. Biden had directed further action to deter the attacks alleged by the US, Mr. Kirby said. The Biden administration already conducted airstrikes against facilities used by Iran-backed groups on the Syrian side of the Iraq-Syria border. Given the ongoing series of attacks by Iran-backed groups targeting US interests in Iraq, the president directed further military action to disrupt and deter such attacks. We are in Iraq at the invitation of the government of Iraq for the sole purpose of assisting the Iraqi security forces in their efforts to defeat ISIS. The United States took necessary, appropriate, and deliberate action designed to limit the risk of escalation, but also to send a clear and unambiguous deterrent message, Mr. Kirby said. In self-defense. As a matter of international law, the US acted pursuant to its right of self-defense. The strikes were both necessary to address the threat and appropriately limited in scope, he said. While the Syrian Observatory said 7 militia members were killed, the BBC reported that Sana, Syrian state media, saying 3 civilians and a child were killed in the strikes. The strikes come at a significant time in Iran and in Iran-US relations. Last week, Iran elected a hardliner, Ebrahim Raisi, as president. On Monday, Mr. Biden will welcome President Reuven Rivlin of Israel, a close ally of the US and a major rival of Iran. The two are expected to discuss negotiations for the US and Iran to re-engage in the Iran nuclear deal or the JPOA, the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, a move opposed by Israel. Ukraine, US launch Black Sea drills. The exercise comes days after Russia U.K. row over warship in disputed waters. On its way, last week, Russia said it fired warning shots at HMS Defender for violation of its territorial waters. After Agence France Presse Kyiv. Ukraine and the United States launched joint naval exercises in the Black Sea on Monday in a show of Western cooperation with Kyiv as it faces off with Russia. The drills come just days after the British Royal Navy's HMS Defender passed near Russian-annexed Crimea in the Black Sea, with Moscow saying it fired warning shots at the destroyer to ward it off. The Sea Breeze drills, which have taken place 21 times since 1997, will involve some 5,000 military personnel from more than 30 countries. The exercises will last 2 weeks and involve around 30 ships, including the missile destroyer USS Ross. Ukrainian Navy Commander Oleksiy Nezhpapa said during an opening ceremony in Odessa that the exercises would send a powerful message to maintain stability and peace in our region. Russia said it fired warning shots last Wednesday at the HMS Defender after what it said was a violation of its territorial waters. Britain said it was making an innocent passage through Ukrainian territorial waters in accordance with international law. Russia annexed Crimea from Ukraine in 2014 and claims the waters around the peninsula as part of its territory. Most countries do not recognize the takeover and stand behind Ukraine's claims to the waters. Washington is a key ally of Kyiv in its conflict with Moscow over Crimea and pro-Moscow separatist regions in eastern Ukraine. In 2018, Russian forces boarded and took control of 3 Ukrainian naval ships off the Black Sea Peninsula. Iraq, Egypt and Jordan hold summit in Baghdad. They discussed ways to bolster ties on security, energy and trade. Agence France Presse Baghdad. Egypt, Jordan and Iraq agreed to bolster security and economic cooperation at a tripartite summit on Sunday that saw an Egyptian head of state visit Iraq for the first time in 3 decades. The visits by Egypt's President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi and Jordan's King Abdullah II came as Iraq seeks to move closer to Arab allies of the United States in the Middle East. Iraq is also seeking to establish itself as a mediator between Arab countries and Iran, after reportedly hosting talks in April between Tehran and Riyadh. Mr. Sisi and Abdullah met Iraqi President Barham Saleh and Prime Minister Mustafa al-Kadhimi, with Mr. Saleh saying the encounter was an eloquent message amid enormous regional challenges. Iraq's recovery paves the way to an integrated system for our region built on the fight against extremism, respect for sovereignty and economic partnership, Mr. Saleh said on Twitter. The summit held between Mr. Kadhimi and his guests broached regional issues, as well as ways of bolstering cooperation between them in the fields of security, energy and trade, according to a joint statement. The leaders discussed a political solution to Syria's civil war based on UN resolutions that would preserve its security and stability and provide adequate conditions for the return of refugees. Bangladesh shuts amid virus surge. Migrants' exodus begins. The country recorded its highest death toll of 119 on Sunday. Migrant workers and families leaving for their native places on Monday. F. Munir UZ Zaman. Agence France Presse Dhaka. Thousands of people were stranded in Bangladesh's capital on Monday as authorities halted almost all public transport ahead of a sweeping lockdown imposed to combat a deadly resurgence of COVID-19 infections. The country reported 119 deaths on Sunday, its highest ever daily death toll from the pandemic, while new infections have been averaging around 5,000 for the past few days. Officials blamed the recent spike in cases on the highly contagious coronavirus Delta variant first identified in neighboring India. The majority of the South Asian nation's 168 million population will be confined to their homes by Thursday as part of the restrictions, with only essential services and some export-facing factories allowed to operate. The lockdown announcement sparked an exodus of migrant workers from the capital Dhaka to home villages on Sunday, with tens of thousands of people cramming into ferries to cross the major river. The staggered implementation of the lockdown rules left thousands of workers in Dhaka forced to walk to their offices on Monday, sometimes for hours, in the sweltering summer heat. Large columns of people were seen walking on the main roads early Monday. Workplaces will be shut from Wednesday. Bicycle rickshaws were allowed to operate in a last-minute government concession on Sunday, but prices had soared to unaffordable levels, commuters said. "I started walking at 7 a.m. I can't afford a rickshaw ride," Shefali Begum, 60, who was going to her daughter's home in central Dhaka, said. US presses allies to bring back citizens who joined IS. About 10,000 suspected IS fighters are being held in Syria. Antony Blinken. Agence France Presse Rome. Secretary of State Antony Blinken on Monday pressed US allies to bring back citizens arrested overseas for joining the Islamic State group, warning they could not be held indefinitely in Syria. Mr. Blinken made the appeal in Rome at a meeting of an 83-member coalition on defeating the extremist network, where he and host Italy called for greater attention to the threat in Africa. About 10,000 suspected Islamic State fighters are being held in northern Syria by Western allied Kurdish fighters, according to US estimates. This situation is simply untenable. It just can't persist indefinitely, Mr. Blinken said. The United States continues to urge countries, including coalition partners, to repatriate, rehabilitate and, where applicable, prosecute its citizens, he said. France, UK opposed. France and Britain, two of the closest US allies, have been major holdouts against calls to bring back their citizens, which were also made by former President Donald Trump's administration. Both nations have painful experiences with attacks and see little incentive and plenty of political cost to bringing back radicalized citizens who are already jailed overseas. Mr. Blinken praised Italy as one of the few Western European nations that repatriate its citizens and also hailed efforts by Central Asian nations, such as Kazakhstan, which he said had brought back 600 fighters and their family members and put them in rehabilitation programs. According to a Human Rights Watch, the Kurdish-led Syrian Democratic Forces are holding over 63,000 women and children of suspected IS fighters from over 60 nations in two camps surrounded by barbed wire. 2. Biggest dam starts making power. Associated Press Beijing. The first two generating units of the world's second biggest hydroelectric dam were officially turned on Monday in southwestern China, the government announced. The Bahaitan Dam on Jinsha River, a tributary of the Yangtze, is part of Chinese efforts to curb surging fossil fuel demand by building more hydropower capacity at a time when dams have fallen out of favor in other countries due to environmental complaints. The announcement comes ahead of the ruling Communist Party's celebration this week of the official 100th anniversary of its 1921 founding. Plans call for the 289 tall Bahaitan Dam to have 16 generating units with a capacity of 1 million kilowatts each. Koreans, heartbroken over Kim's emaciated looks. National concern. A combination of file photos of Kim Jong-un on February 8, left, and 15 June 2021. AP. Associated Press Seoul. Heartbroken North Koreans have been worrying tearfully about leader Kim Jong-un's emaciated looks, state media quoted a local resident as saying. The comments were seen as an effort to boost support for Mr. Kim as he grapples with deepening economic hardships caused by the COVID-19 pandemic, economic sanctions and natural disasters, some experts said. In recent state media photos, Mr. Kim has appeared to have lost a considerable amount of weight. Some North Korea watchers said Mr. Kim, who is about 170 centimeters tall, may have lost 10 to 20 kg. Reparations needed for people facing racism and rights chief calls for making amends. Associated Press Geneva. The UN Human Rights Chief, in a landmark report launched after the killing of George Floyd in the US, is urging countries worldwide to do more to help end discrimination, violence and systemic racism against people of African descent and make amends to them, including through reparations. The report from Michelle Bachelet, the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, offers a sweeping look at the roots of centuries of mistreatment faced by Africans and people of African descent, notably from the transatlantic slave trade. The report, a year in the making, hopes to build on momentum around the recent, intensified scrutiny worldwide about the blight of racism and its impact on people of African descent as epitomized by the high-profile killings of unarmed black people in the US and elsewhere. The report aims to speed up action by countries to end racial injustice, end impunity for rights violations by police, ensured that people of African descent and those who speak out against racism are heard, and face up to past wrongs through accountability and redress. I am calling on all states to stop denying, and start dismantling racism, Ms. Bachelet said. Thank you. Economy news. Healthcare, travel sectors welcome stimulus scale-up medical infra manifold. Special correspondent Mumbai. Industry and analysts welcomed the targeted interventions, with a special focus on health and tourism, announced by Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman. The measures to keep enterprises afloat in the aftermath of COVID 2.0 in the form of extending loan guarantees to the healthcare, tourism sectors and small borrowers, in addition to increasing the scope of ECLGS by ₹1.5 lakh crore are very welcome steps, CII President TV Narendran said. The extension of ECLGS's scope and coverage are expected to provide significant support to the cash flow of the stressed sectors, he added. Stating that tourism had been one of the most impacted sectors, he said the package would usher in much-needed liquidity and help revive the employment-intensive sector, mitigating closures. Financial support in the form of working capital loans with 100% guarantee to over 11,000 registered tourist guides, travel and tourism stakeholders will help save livelihoods, revive the sector and mitigate further closures and also create new job opportunities, he added. FICCI Senior VP Sanjeev Mehta said, while some of the existing relief measures have been extended, the focus of the new measures is very well placed. The emphasis laid on the COVID-affected sectors is laudable. The extension of the Atmanirbhar Bharat Rozgar Yojana until 31st March 2022 should help support additional hiring, he added. The health sector too welcomed steps targeted at this industry. The allocation of 23,220 rupees crore towards public health for COVID care and future preparedness with a special emphasis on pediatric emergency preparedness will bolster efforts for any such healthcare challenges in the future, said Dr. Pratap C. Reddy, Chairman, Apollo Hospitals. Healthcare industry body NADIALT President Harsh Mahajan said, the pinpoint focus on augmenting manpower and infrastructural resources for pediatric care is a welcome step and a new beginning. He, however, added an increased outlay of 50,000 rupees crore on scaling up medical infrastructure would be useful in the short term but has to be increased manifold to make up for the neglect of the healthcare sector over the past several decades. There can be no better time than the present to fulfill the long-pending demand of the healthcare sector to be accorded infrastructure status to enable the nation leapfrog to the next level of healthcare, he added. Rikant Petty, co-founder, Ease My Trip, said credit relief will play a crucial role in reviving the tourism sector. Tourist guides and other travel stakeholders are the backbone of the industry and we believe that the special fund outlay will enable them to rise from the challenges they had faced over the past year and a half. With PTI inputs. Thank you. Thank you so much for watching this video as a podcast. Do like, share and comment. Press the subscribe button and hit the bell icon to get new notifications. Thank you. Take care and stay safe. God bless you all. Jai Maa Bharti. To download news and editorials in MP3, follow us on Telegram, Virtual School Official. The link is provided in the description below.